you have a question for a specific presenter, please just kind of unmute yourself and then ask your question and direct it to a specific presenter. So any questions?
Hi there.
Go ahead.
So I wanted to ask a question for Lindsay, which is, you mentioned—
Oh, and maybe introduce yourself quickly too, just so.
I'm Sean Augustino, DCI Engineers in Seattle, structural.
Great.
And my question was for Lindsay, which is, you had mentioned the mill-specific EPDs being something that would be really beneficial to carbon accounting. Has there been any movement on that, or do you see something that might be useful to get the industry moving that way?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Shauna. I have to say we are seeing more and more product-specific EPDs available. I have full disclaimer, I'm in the nonprofit world, not necessarily the LCA practitioner world, but we are seeing a lot more transparency out there. However, it's still really not enough in a way. And I'll also say that we completed this research maybe 8 months ago, and since then we've seen a huge increase in data available and research going on. So this is definitely an industry that's changing very rapidly. So I wouldn't be surprised if this data starts to become available within the next 5 years or so. So to your question, I know there are product-specific EPDs. There's not really enough out there right now. But I think within procurement, just asking the questions, asking for the data, trying to push the industry in that realm will have a pretty significant impact. So it all starts with asking. Hope that answers your question.
Great, thanks. Next, any other questions?
There were a whole bunch of questions earlier on about these different certification systems, since there's already, as Lindsay showed, this is Z Smith, wide variation depending on how you do the math, even with, if you will, almost very similar inputs. But then there was in the comments stream, there are a lot of people wondering, starting with Geoffrey Guest's presentation, about sort of proof by assertion that the members of the ISO group all agreed that whatever your certification was, you were by definition sustainable if you had a certification, which just seems crazy. Could you talk a little bit more about what's ahead for people who want to specify these materials and would like to just have a little greater confidence that what we're doing is really of net benefit?
Sorry, and who are you directing that question to?
Starting with Geoffrey Guest, who sort of started off with the ISO standard, where basically as long as you had a certification system, you were carbon neutral.
Hi there. Yeah, this is Jeff. That's a good question. Unfortunately, I'm not on the technical committee. I've been thinking about joining it, but so I can't really give you a good answer what's going to happen next. But yeah, I agree. I think we need a little bit more differentiation between the certification schemes, because they're clearly not, they're not equal. So yeah, it's a good question. Sorry, I can't answer it though.
Anyone else have any of the speakers have anything to add to that?
I guess I can jump in. And first, hi Z, hope you're doing well. I would say that even if the data isn't necessarily there within the LCA world, there's definitely opportunities to reduce your carbon impact. So there are the various certification systems, some being the gold star versus others. But I think even if you're getting wood that doesn't necessarily come from a certified body, you can look at the principles that go into that certification. I think, a critical one just being making sure that the wood is being replanted after it's harvested. I know FSC dives into a certain number or a certain percentage of retention, tree retention, protecting waterways, that kind of thing. So there's, even though there's not necessarily data out there necessarily to support it within design, there's a lot you can do as a designer to make sure you're getting, the best available wood products at the moment, whether that be through a certification body, through taking various principles available, through kind of just understanding the processes and where, there's energy consumption, where there's opportunities for reduction, that kind of thing. And I'm not sure who said it. It may have been Mitch at the end, but Obviously, like wood taking the place of concrete or steel is probably a really great upfront benefit, even if we don't necessarily have all the data available right now. So I think just pushing that within the industry as well. But yeah, I'll defer to Mitch and Eric if they have other comments to add.
Mitch or Eric, either? Anything else to add?
I mean, sorry, this is Jeff again. I could add, like, as part of the LCA Squared initiative that we're doing, you know, we are striving to develop more comprehensive life cycle inventory across all construction materials, and obviously forestry activities is an important one. And so what we really are looking at trying to do is getting more, you know, like, as I was mentioning, like species and spatial and forest management, you know, higher resolution on that, more differentiation, whether it be at the, you know, FMU level or ecozone level. We're striving to understand that more by looking at utilizing the CBM CFS3 model to be more explicit about that, and that may lead to, you know, a much more diverse and richer data set for forestry activities across Canada, and that may help differentiate, you know, different certification, you know, forests managed under different certification schemes. But it could also be a long shot depending on, you know, data availability and how, you know, how accurate we can actually get. But this is what we're looking into right now.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks.
Maybe we'll move on to other questions. Is there any other questions?
Yeah, Anthony, I have one. This is Kelsey, also from EDR. I guess this is kind of, I'll direct it at Lindsay first because you touched on this. Sourcing materials from Europe, specifically, obviously CLT, and finding that that's still kind of, because of the substitution benefit, better. Did anyone on the panel look at shipping and transportation weights and find if there is a rule of thumb, or is it basically it's just so much better than concrete that shipping, whether it's from Europe to the States, the benefit's gonna outweigh everything? Or is there a distance that we should limit, or truck, like by truck or train, or what kind of transportation?
Okay, yeah, I'll start. Thanks, Kelsey. That's a great question. And I think part of the reason it's brought up is just because there's a limited data source within the tools we have available. There are a lot of mass timber manufacturers within the US and Canada. So that's kind of, and more, of course, coming onto the fields every day. We're seeing maybe 5 or 6 more within the US compared to last year, that kind of thing. But regarding transportation, that's a really great question. And I know I was speaking to someone recently, and I can't remember who, but who did an LCA study and actually found that there were carbon and cost savings from shipping from Austria via barge versus trucking across the US via truck. Just because barges are, for some people, surprisingly a lot more efficient because it's sending a large amount of quantity, especially compared to truck. Obviously, truck being the worst option there, train being better, barge actually being really efficient. But I would say, with a grain of salt, like, of course, the more locally you can procure these materials, probably the better. Not only like reducing emissions, but also supporting a local economy. And also because you probably have more input and more data associated with where you're getting the wood from a forestry side of things, from a mill, sawmill manufacturing side of things. So I don't know if that necessarily answers your question. Basically, that it is surprisingly more efficient to ship via barge, and that can be a carbon saving, but I think that should be taken into account with other factors, not necessarily carbon related.
Yeah, no, that I think that does answer it, and I've done a couple localized studies on confirming that. I just wanted to see if there were more to compare against, and kind of just with knowing that, well, the Pacific Northwest has a boom in the production here that, you know, the Eastern US might not have that same resource. But if we're trying to act on carbon quickly, looking to Europe where they also have the manufacture and the process down, just kind of continuing to establish that might be a viable route while we're waiting for the new manufacturer places to get on their feet here on the East Coast.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. Knowing that, you know, there's several plants coming on board soon. I know, you know, Walmart's campus is Structurlam is opening a whole new manufacturing plant just to support that project. So that'll be available within Southeast US. But yep, exactly. I don't know if any other presenters wanted to jump in on that. But
I can mention a few things. It's Eric Wood at Morrison Hershfield. Just on the impact of shipping overseas versus shipping locally. In practice, it's more about the inputs along the processing or the manufacturing steps that are taken in North America versus what's taken as a process for manufacturing in Europe. So the standard in Europe is very much, you know, growing the tree for the purpose, and a lot of other industries are created and utilized to get to a very low footprint for that manufacturing process, which is, we're not quite there yet in North America, which is where we essentially have a dual process where we're making lumber and we're selling it as lumber. And then, you know, most of the CLT manufacturers here in North America are buying that lumber from a distribution and then replicating a lot of the processes that were already done essentially to create the lumber, to kind of revalue or re-engineer the wood for the purpose of making CLT. And so it's that dual process that we still have, you know, in our North American model, essentially for making CLT, which makes the overseas product somewhat as an equal, or in some cases a little bit better still.
Yeah, I'll add to that, Kelsey, most of the feedback that we've been hearing has been the move to go European is cost driven. Like Eric's touching on, the supply chain infrastructure there is just not at the same place that it is in North America. However, that's changing, and that's changing pretty quickly. You know, I know with our plant, we are built on that same European model of forest finish, and there are other plants coming online here where the market in North America isn't going to remain that model of buying off the market, of redundancy in drying, and then taking it and then creating your mass timber products. And so hopefully we're going to see the mass timber supply in North America become, you know, cost competitive with the European supply, which frankly it hasn't been for the last several years. And that's where we've seen the Europeans coming in and selling more product into this market.
Thanks for those answers. Anyone else with a question? No more questions? All right. Well, thank you everyone for attending this webinar, and first and foremost to all of our speakers, Jeff, Lindsay, Eric, Mitch. Those are amazing presentations. Actually, I apologize, I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but this webinar is kindly sponsored by the Canadian Wood Councillor and Woodworks. And so we're very appreciative of them sponsoring this event and this webinar. And yeah, once again, thanks all the speakers, and thank you all for joining this webinar. We have recorded these presentations. Jeff, Lindsay, and Eric's presentation will be posted online with slides. Mitch's presentation won't be posted. However, if you do want to reach out to him with further questions and whatnot, please do so. He had his contact at the end of the slides, and I can send that out in an email afterwards as well. But I'll send a link out to everyone that was attending. And yeah, once again, thank you everyone. And we will have more webinar events moving forward, given all the coronavirus stuff that's happening. And so look forward for more information on that front. If you want to hear about updates for those events, please go to ecnvancouver.com and you can sign up for the mailing list, and you'll get email updates for our next events. All right, thanks everyone.